and thank you for having me. And first of all, I'd like to congratulate the organization for bringing someone on stage who's not a designer to a design conference. I have a background in philosophy, and over the last few days I was talking to a lot of designers, and I noticed how they were actually also a bit confused about what it meant to be a designer. So in that sense, you're kind of similar, like philosophers. So I'm not going to show you some work, I'm only going to show you some ideas that I have about the future and about how I think that digital technology can bring us closer to nature. So let me take you to the mountains in Europe. I grew up in the Swiss Alps, and I had really long winters with lots of snow. And even during school time, I would take my skis to school, so I would go up the mountains during lunch to play on the slopes. But this summer, after living in Amsterdam for 10 years, I decided I wanted to go back to the mountains. And this time, not to play around, I wanted to climb the highest mountain of Europe, the Mont Blanc, or the White Mountain. I wanted to experience how it was to not have my computer screen in front of me 24/7 and this endless stream of data and of being online. And up the mountain, I saw the brightest sun and the snow, and it was the season that was dictating life. And there was this really thin air that was so difficult to breathe, so we had to slow down while climbing. And it was this rough and pure experiences that I really wanted to have, like coming closer to nature. And I was aware I turned into the city girl who was in search for nature. And at the same time, I saw how climate change affected even these places far away from society. I saw how the glaciers were only a small part of what they used to be. And at the same time, I thought, isn't it weird that I can only think of nature when I'm that far away from my urban city life? Now, before I came to India, my friend who I was climbing the mountain with said, "Julia, please don't get too romantic about these ideas you have about nature, all right?" And I kind of understand that, because I was saying all the time that I was doing this climbing in the name of love, because my parents, they got engaged on top of the mountain. So in fact, I am romantic, but also I'm bloody serious about it. I really want to understand what our modern relationship to nature is like. So what do? I work at a think tank called FreedomLab, and we're a bunch of young researchers, all with a background in philosophy. And what we do is we try to understand how technology is impacting our daily lives. And we do that by building future scenarios, using speculative methods. So to really understand what change means and to advise ministry and government and corporates on that. So the thing I was focusing on was, how is our relationship to nature shaped by technology? Oh, I have to go back one time. That's... All right. So let's go back to modernity, or the place we're in now. Modernity has brought us a lot of technological inventions that were considered very smart at first, right? So remember the first plastic bag that was praised because it was so durable and not organic, so it would not perish. And it was a way for us to master nature. We were seen as a subject that through our tools and technology, we could control nature or our environment. But soon these very characteristics of plastic, of being unnatural, turns its back against us, right? We are now stuck with these oceans polluted by plastic, and our drinking water is contaminated. So we actually don't have our inventions under control anymore, nor do we have our natural environment under control. And this has turned into what I would like to call the crisis of modernity, climate change. We have no clue how to go about it. This is a picture, or these are images by Stefan Olsen, and it shows the melting ice of Greenland and how the sled dogs are actually walking over the melting ice instead of over the real ice. And I think it's a beautifully surreal but also a tragic picture of how we are trying to navigate this new era of climate change, but we've lost it. We don't have it under control. So how do we react to this? We try to keep things as they were. What you see here is a rhino that's being airlifted or transported from one wildlife reserve to another in Africa. And it really depicts how we're trying to get control or to conserve nature within these restricted areas and to keep things as they were. And even if it's really good effort to save species, it's weird that we think of nature as something that we can keep in a certain form, right? It denies the entire form of nature, of shaping us, of shaping organisms, of shaping our technology. So today, I would like to take and share with you an optimistic future of how technology can again shape our relation to nature, maybe in a better way. And I would like to do so by taking you through 3 natural design principles. Principles that I found both in digital technology and in nature. So I started to analyze these emerging technologies like blockchain technology, the advances in biotechnology, AI, 3 and 4D printing, advances in material sciences, etc. And I really found striking similarities between natural organisms and digital ecosystems. So the first design principle I want to share with you is the one of the emergence of complex systems. So what we see here is the beautiful dance of birds flying together in the sky. And now, if you look at this swarm of drones, they actually show a similar pattern, right? It shows to me that even if we have programmed these drones individually, at a larger scale, they're showing this beautiful, complex pattern that we have not designed up front. So this is an installation by the Dutch design studio Drift. And it's just beautiful how it can not only mimic nature, but show that digital technology can emerge in complex systems. Systems that we don't have under control, like we thought in modernity, right? And this is another such example. This is called The Game of Life by John Conway. And what it shows is that it's actually a basic game or model in computer sciences. And to every single cell, really basic rules apply. And if you apply these rules to every single cell, on a macro level, these complex patterns and dynamics emerge. So even if we thought we had inventions under control in the initial state, things arise and emerge that we do not have under control. If you Google The Game of Life by John Conway, you will find beautiful examples of what kind of dynamics will emerge. So design principle number 2 is the one of agency. Now, what we see here is the communication of trees underground. When you look at trees, you might see individual objects, just a bunch of trees standing together in a forest. But only recently we discovered that actually underground, they are communicating with each other. They are sending each other signals. Hey, there's a predator coming, or we're short on these and that supplies. They are helping each other to adapt and evolve and survive. And as we silly humans discovered this, we said, hey, that's cool. It's like the Wood Wide Web or the Internet of Trees. But it really shows that even living things that are non-humans can have agency. They talk to each other. They're talking agents. They're communicating in order to survive. Now, a beautiful visualization of that, of the agency of things for me, is this game. This is a game by PlayStation, and it's designed by David O'Reilly, and it shows how you can be a ladybug, or you can be a plant, or you can zoom out and take a perspective of a tree, or even an island, and you can take the perspective of an entire planet. And what it really does is it helps you to train what it's like to not be the central agent in this world, right? In the game of life, humans are not the central agents. And this helps you to train this imagination. And I really think with new technologies like AR and VR, we are increasingly able to train that we are not the central agents in this world. Now, we are actually already doing that by letting go our central role as the only intelligent creatures on Earth. We are creating artificial intelligence. So what you see here is neural networks, which is basically a series of algorithms that can adapt with changing input. So it's very similar to the human brain in that sense. But the thing is, we are really letting go of control because this artificial intelligence is going to steer us increasingly in our decisions in the future. And what is more beautiful, maybe, is that by creating these creatures that can have agency over us, we might open up a worldview of animism, which is the view that plants, humans, and other things and non-living things can all have agency, and we're all part of an order. And now it's getting really exciting when we apply this to matter, to materials. What you see here is work by designer Nicole Hohn, and she has designed these 4D printed water plants, and they can show how they can respond to the environment. So it can change by the touch of a human, or by ripples in the water, or by changing temperature. It responds to that. So if even materials are becoming smart and show agency, what does it mean for us as humans? We're not the central agents in this world anymore. Well, this leads me to the third design principle that I want to share with you today, which is the design principle of replication. These are strings of DNA, and I would like to say that we are only beginning to understand what are the basic building blocks of life. We're only starting to understand what our genes do, how they interact with each other. So what nature shows us is that it has found a way of bringing forth information, right? Information is the thing that survives. It's not so much the material stuff. And that's something beautiful, because in digital technology, unlike our plastic that we invented way before, we see that it's more about the ideas that survive. It's more about the information. If you buy a computer, you have to update it at one point, right? Even Paul has to do that. So it's less about material values and more about information and how information lives on. And one of the most striking things about DNA and our findings into DNA is that today we found that in one liquid drop of DNA, we can store at least 1 million of copies of books. So nature has found such a smart way to store data. Now, moving from genetic replication to cultural replication. This is a fragment of my favorite movie, a classic sci-fi movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. And what do we see here? It's one of our ancestors, and he's playing around with the bone, and at one moment he realizes, actually, this bone can have a function. I can smash things with this. And it will help him to survive. And this idea of using a bone as a tool, he will pass that on to his other friend, right? So this is the picture of the first cultural replicator. It's the invention of our first technology. And what it means to me is that even if we have invented technology, we will not remain in charge of it. It will outlive us, right? The ideas of technology and the smart ideas will outlive us, the smart information. Now, if we apply this to digital ecosystems, it gets even more exciting. This is the coming into existence of the Bitcoin. So the first dot that you saw was Satoshi Nakamoto, who wrote the first protocol for the Bitcoin. And what he did is he designed it in a way that it was fully open source. People were able to contribute to his design. He let loose of the control over it, right? So people could give feedback to it, change it, fork, etc. So the system that emerged, the Bitcoin, it was proven by being adaptive to the input that it got. Now, this evolutionary perspective is interesting since it shows us that we humans are not the central agents in evolution. It will outlive us. We are only a small part of technological and social systems and of natural systems. And these decentralized ecosystems are very like natural ecosystems. And Nassim Taleb, the thinker, has called these systems anti-fragile, which means that they're more effective than systems that are centralized, organized, right? So even in political systems, he saw that by creating a system that was decentralized, that these systems were more effective than political systems that were rigid and centralized in their organization. So what's the point of these three principles that I shared with you and that I saw in nature and also in digital ecosystems? What is the point that digital ecosystems can show the emergence of complex systems, that they can show agency, and that they can replicate? Well, it shows that nature has found and developed very smart design principles, and that we humans are only starting to understand what these design principles are. And that even without our intention, digital ecosystems are sometimes displaying these natural design principles because they are very smart. Nature has found such smart ways of dealing with problems. So for me, this means that nature has the future, and that technology is only a part of it. It shows to me the ever-evolving nature of nature. And instead of drifting further away from nature like we did in modernity, emerging technologies have the potential to bring us closer to nature. Thank you.